Well, here we are on Friday, and you'll notice it's not exactly 11 o'clock, it's 10 minutes past 11. Now, there's a reason for that. I just wanted to make room for Pat's sensibilities because he may well have been standing upright and silent for a minute at 11. So I wanted to make sure he had elbow room. Would that be right, Pat? Were you
Oh,
standing?
absolutely, yes. The 11th of the 11th of the 11th.
Would you stand for that?
No, Jude, I wouldn't.
Why not?
By the way, I don't mean that disrespect anyone. And I had a great uncle died in the First World War, and we went to visit his grave and all the rest of it. And Jude, everybody's entitled to wear the poppy and all that. But there's something about it. Like I have a real issue, and it's not bigotry and it's not anything else. But the British Army's role in Ireland has not been covered in glory. And while I would love to say that I'd have no problem paying tribute to those heroes who died, and I regard them as heroes, most of them, because they did fight genuinely. But Jude, the track record in Ireland and some of the behaviour of some of the British politicians over the years, and including people like Churchill in this country, and you can go back a lot further. I have an issue with that, and I'd be a hypocrite if I wore a poppy.
Well, I would feel the same, Pat. In fact, I go further than that. You say these were brave men that fought and so on. I suppose if you go into an army and you fight them,
individually they are. I'm not saying that the
Yeah.
whole concept of it was.
I see. The thing that strikes me is that most of the Irish who died in the First World War were duped.
Yeah,
They were sold lies, and they went out
Absolutely.
and expect. Somebody should say that. Instead of
Defense of
simply
small
saying
nations and all this stuff.
weren't they courageous? There's a wee bit more to it than that.
Yeah,
I also feel a bit uneasy about this. Whether these people who died, are they being honoured or glorified or what? I mean, I'm just trying to think, is there a difference between the way the Brits celebrate Remembrance Sunday or Remembrance Day today
yeah.
and the way that, say, Republicans would do at Milltown plot?
No, Judge, one is the glorious dead and the other are terrorists. Which I find, and a lot of Irish people have bought into that.
But we haven't, Pat. That's the point. And I'm wondering, I'm just trying to be honest about this. If I was standing at, the Milltown Cemetery, where they were remembering the IRA guys who were killed during the Troubles, would it be any different from the way, on a much bigger scale, the British commemorate those who died in the British Army?
Well, from their perspective, I'd say that it was the same.
Would it look the same, I wonder? Yeah.
No, it wouldn't look the same, no, because it's all pomp and ceremony and the Brits, and there'll be wreath laying and bands playing and whatever else, and all the upper echelons of British society. Now, I presume there'd be some sort of commemoration at Milltown, but it wouldn't be on that sort of level. But Jude, I think somewhere along the way, when you look at, I was reading about Kevin Barry the last day. He was only 18, hanged. And there was some guy on some time ago trying to claim he was a terrorist that he went out to kill. And I was going, gee, how brainwashed have we become that we buy that?
It's true. Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to check, Pat, that you weren't standing beside your bookcase to your towering 6'3" height. Okay, let's deal with a few of the things that have been happening. For example, Prime Minister Sunak hasn't been idle, has he? He has gone to the British-Irish meeting. He met with the Scots, he met with the Welsh, and of course he's going to be meeting with the Irish. Well, what do you make of it? Because it's not usual for a British Prime Minister to turn up, is it?
No, I think that, Jude, the adults are back in the room. At least that's what I hope. Jude, I think that after, the Brexit, people like Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, were like the sort of schoolboys, that had taken over the school. We can do now whatever we want, and there's no consequences. We got the big boys out of the room, sort of thing. Jude, they have messed up their reputation. They have messed up their economy. They have messed up numerous trade deals. Basically the ratings agencies, the financial rating agencies, Britain as in deep doo-doo in regards to their financial affairs. So Jude, the whole lot of things now, I think Rishi Sunak has a lot of ground to make up. And one of the things, he's the first Tory Prime Minister to attend, first ever Tory Prime Minister. I think Gordon Brown was the last one. I think that was about 2007. So I think he's saying now, right, wait a minute, I am serious. I want this protocol thing sorted out. I'm showing up at this meeting to show respect to Scotland and to Wales and to there. But should, of course, the usual typical bloody thing is, the only group missing is who's missing? The people who want unity and all the rest of it. As good old Northern Ireland, our ministers are well, not ours because I don't live there. Weren't at the meeting, and the very people who are crying most about this glory of our unity and our union are the very people who weren't there.
Yeah. I'm wondering, what we really should attach to Sunak's visit or attendance. Like, I take the point that it is sending a signal. I'm intent on solving this, and of course, by meeting with Nicola Sturgeon and the Welsh guy, he's saying, I believe in the union. But you see, the main thing that has to be sorted is the protocol bill that's going through Parliament, British Parliament at the moment. Now, if that keeps going through and eventually is passed, that's going to put a huge hole into the whole withdrawal bill.
Yeah, and I think that's why, this is politics. Sunak has to keep the ERG on board, the old right-wing, ultras. And he's keeping them on board by saying there's a dual strategy here, that the protocol bill's going through Parliament, but I'm going meeting. But what he's really doing, the Taoiseach described the meeting as warm, and he says there was a wonderful opportunity. And Sunak says, look, I want a negotiated settlement, and one that's acceptable to the EU. And he's obviously putting a lot of the negotiated and ramming the protocol bill through Westminster, which was the last government's approach.
I think in general, Sunak is sending good signals, and you'd be a bit more hopeful than you would with the likes of Boris, not to mention Liz Truss, if you'll pardon the expression. But I'm not sure, but it'd be a difficult one to square the circle of the protocol bill. And incidentally, by the way, I think, Michelle O'Neill said, I think at the Ardèche, that the reason that the DUP weren't coming in was they didn't want to serve under her as First Minister. I'm sure they didn't. But I honestly would believe that the main thing with them is this notion of the integrity of the UK. And they are being sort of hived out a bit with this different treatment. That's part of the deal, I think. But it is a bit different. I would grant them sincerity in that. Would you?
No, I think, no, I think, now, initially when the protocol was, both Arlene Foster and Jeffrey Donaldson basically sort of said this was opportunities on both places, to go into Europe and the UK. But then somewhere along the way, that whole mood music changed, and suddenly the protocol became a sort of a big issue in regard to identity and the union and all the rest of it. So, and Jude, I do think there's a sort of perfect storm, if I can use that term again. Unionism does not like what's happening, and I think a lot of people on unionism and loyalism are rattled by the recent elections, and by the fact that there seems to be a massive change. Not only demographics, Jude, but every time you look now, Jude, even if you listened or watched the news, nearly every second expert now, or commentator, or professor or lawyer has got an Irish, native Irish name. Seamus O'Brien, even a happy laugh every time. When I now over to our BBC's political Andy McLafferty. That wouldn't have happened 50 years ago.
And I see where there's going to be a special programme on Radio 4 about Remembrance Sunday or Remembrance Day. And the guy who's going to be presenting it is a totally English guy, rejoicing in the name of Paddy O'Connell. You couldn't make it up, as they say. Last question, Pat, and just give you 5 seconds to answer it, and then we'll move on to the next item. Do you think that it is the protocol bill and the hiving off of NEI from the rest of the UK, or is it the lack of desire to serve as Deputy First Minister that's holding back the DUP? Which of the two?
No, I think, Jude. No, Jude. I think it's not the whole identity thing is the bigger issue. Surfing under. No, they're saying it's not, but I think it is.
You could be right. Could be right. Okay, let's move on to another one. And actually, it relates to what we're talking about. I don't know, were you listening yesterday to Colin Harvey's?
Yeah, in fact,
interview?
Jude, I was driving down from Letterkenny yesterday. I heard him on RT, but I'd
Yeah.
also heard him talk back yesterday morning. He had been on, I presume, Good Morning Ulster earlier, and there was a big discussion about it. So, sorry, go ahead.
Well, what are you making of him? Well, I'm just wondering what you're making of him. He's using the expression that they're looking to put a target on his back.
I heard him saying that. Yeah.
Scary language.
Yeah.
Why do you think they're going after him so hard? I mean,
Because-
the Ireland's future. There's a whole lot of people, quite a large body of people in that.
I think what Colin is almost demolishing a lot of the old unionism brick by brick. A lot of it, and he's doing it in an intellectual way. He's a very bright guy. He's very passionate. I've heard, the thing we were at a couple of years ago at the waterfront. I heard him speak there, and he was very angry about the fact the way the whole thing was portrayed. I remember the day he said, if you speak about it in Ireland, you're quote almost like a terrorist. Jude, Pat+Jude is a lecturer at Queen's, wasn't, or still is maybe. David Trumbull was a lecturer at Queen's. They were not sort of, now Edgar Graham way back in the day was during the Troubles, but Colin Harvey is a human rights expert, etc. And I think he's rubbed up seemingly some loyalists. And I remember Ruth Dudley Edwards done an article about him that was put like this, far from pleasant.
Really?
She made about all these people that she would send in someone like a desert Ireland discount. The following week, she says, "Oh, by the way, I forgot. I should have sent Professor Colin Harvey there as well." So there's, there's a sort of he sort of has been targeted, and I think it's because he's very effective. He is an advocate for Irish unity. He's very articulate. And he's got the intellectual gravitas to back it up. And that seems to be what's causing the problem.
Yeah, I think you're right, Pat. I think you've summed up pretty well there. I think it's the fact that he's a lawyer, not just a lawyer, but an academic lawyer, a guy who knows his P's and Q's, and therefore they see him as being. You don't want that kind of person to be involved in some drive towards a border poll, because you can no longer say, it's just scruff and hotheads and idiots that are living in the past. The thing is, he must be a strong guy. He doesn't look strong, but he must be very mentally strong, because Pat+Jude and Rosemary Nelson were both lawyers. And I mean, the British state, essentially, I'm convinced the British state was in collusion to have both those people killed.
There's no doubt about that. Sure, have you ever read Stalker, John Stalker's book? And he said the first thing Jack Herman sort of said to him, I think he took out a cigarette packet, and said, and wrote something like, "These guys are, they're too close and terrorists and all that sort of stuff." And that was, and basically, Stalker said, Jack Herman basically said Pat+Jude is the Sinn Féin or IRA lawyer, and he was basically setting him up.
So it's shocking. I say that thing about mental strength, because you really would need that. Even your, I speak from experience. Even you weren't going to be under physical threat. You have a sense that so many people hate your guts, and really would like to wipe you off the face of the earth. Even you were sure that they weren't going to act on that, and you didn't have the threat of violence. It's still very hard to maintain a point of view whenever so many people are so vitriolically opposed to it. Did you think?
Yeah. Jude, you said something earlier on that Harvey has got intellectual rigor. He just can't dismiss what he said. He has done the research. He's not just this sort of spouting stuff. He's gone through the acts of the Union. He's gone through the the Good Friday Agreement. He's gone through the one in Scotland. I can't remember that one. St Andrews Agreement. He's gone through all, and he's gone through them scientifically, if you know what I mean, forensically. and so on. This guy has got, the wherewithal to argue intellectually that the whole premise of unionism is, falling apart.
Okay, let's leave that and wish well to Colin Harvey. And I suppose we all really should be going onto Twitter and adding our voice to the support that he's getting, because it's a lonely place to be whenever you have people, saying the kind of things they're saying. And he should have a panic button in
By
his
the way,
office.
Sir Geoffrey Donaldson wrote to the provost or the chancellor of Queen's University, because Colin Harvey had published something with the crest of Queen's University. Now, as Colin Harvey said on RT yesterday, all he had to do was ring him up and says, he could have checked it easily. But Sir Geoffrey went very public. It's always, if he's been singled out, you're not allowed to say, unionism and loyalism can speak all day about, their wonderful union and, and so on. But if a nationalist stands up and says, speaks about a united Ireland, he's, been very deliberately provocative. It's amazing.
You're not saying that just because Colin Harvey's a dairyman, are you?
Not at all, no. I don't call him. I've spoken to him on a couple of occasions on it, and he's a very nice fella. But like, fair, as you say, Jude, I think a bit of support for him right now, and I would support anybody, be no matter what they're. Colin Harvey, by the way, has not once advocated violence. He's not one advocated anything unconstitutional. He is what he has done has been sort of straight up. Argued for his position. That's it.
It's good to see. It's good to see. And I actually think that the tide will turn against those people who are trying to undermine him. And it's a sort of a certain cowardice involved in going to the boss to talk to him. Because Colin Harvey yesterday made the appeal, if you want to talk to me, come on, I'll welcome you to talk. We'll have a cup of coffee and you tell me what it is that you think's wrong and the way I'm approaching things. And
Jude, and he says a lot of it is innuendo and sort of fake news. They're attributing motives and things to him that he hasn't said or done.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you have to, if you're going to have a hit figure, you've got to, you can't make any limitations on it. You've got to go full throttle. Yes. Okay, let's look at another item that's got a lot of airing on RT radio. I think it was yesterday, the last couple of days, and that is the Blackrock case.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Duffy had a man on yesterday, I think it was, and this man was apparently, he lives abroad, and he was very successful in his career, and he was saying that Joe Duffy was saying. What they seem to be thinking that if you are successful in your career, then that matters less. But they both agreed that a crime is a crime, and if he was abused, he was abused, and there's no two ways out of it. Would you see that way, Pat?
No, Jude, I think your man you're talking about might be a fellow called John O'Dwyer. I think he lives in Chicago now, and he's had a very successful career. And so I was reading about him in the Irish Times this morning. He said it was sort of like the Wild West of Catholic education. That, Jude, I wrote it down. Where did I write it down? 233 men have made allegations against 77 Spiritan clergy. 77.
Where Holy Ghost fathers at one stage,
previously known as the Holy Ghost Father. Now, Jude, no matter what way you come at that is a massive figure. And I would presume it is not the full story. That there are a whole lot of others who just simply haven't gone forward, or a whole lot of others maybe have died or whatever, And Jude, that is unbelievable. Blackrock, Jude, when I went to a place called St. Eunice, you went to St. Colin, I went to St. Eunice, Blackrock College was considered, the elite of the elite. And it was, the rugby playing school, and where all the, and half of the Tisha, where did Varadkar go? Did he go to Blackrock? I'm not sure. Anyway, it was the elite college, and most of our judges came from Blackrock and places like that. And Jude, we would have sort of said it was the upstanding, it was the elite of the elite, because it was expensive to go there and so on.
Yeah.
But this guy O'Dwyer says that everybody knew what was going on, and he said even the priests who weren't involved knew what was going on. He said, if a young fella was seen coming out of a priest's bedroom at, I know, 12 o'clock at night, and a priest walking by, did the priest never think to ask, what were you doing in there? So, Jude, it was massive cover up and so on. Like the fact, Jude, that there's 233 allegations. I think that might be overall the overall spirit in community, not just in Ireland, but but Jesus, Jude, that is, when you think about it, that against 77 priests.
It's pretty awful. And I'll come to that now, but I that point I started with, I think I want to just add a little caveat on it. They both agreed that the fact that he had been successful, and the implication was, well, it didn't wreck your life. You were able to go on and live a successful life in terms of commercial things anyway. But they were saying, well, it's a crime. It doesn't matter about that. The crime was the crime. I'm not 100% sure about that. For example, if I was to hit you in the head, Pat, with a brick, and if I was to cause you, one of three things might happen, right? Either I could leave a small cut on your head, you could suffer brain damage, or you could be killed.
Yeah.
Now, depending on which one of those three happened, if that case came to court, surely the small cut on the head that I inflicted on you with the brick would give me a much shorter sentence than if I had damaged your brain or killed you. Yeah. So would it not be the case that, this man's life, certainly in terms of, he sounded very self-possessed and clear in his talk. He both agreed. Joe Duffy certainly thought that he had a very successful career in Chicago, wherever he lives. So to that extent, the injury that was inflicted on him wasn't as bad as it might have been. Am I allowed to say that?
Jude, and I take your point, and it's a fair one. But right, but I shouldn't, please don't. If I raped you, and you went on and had a very successful career, would that negate the fact that you still had been raped?
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. You would have still have raped me. But if you raped me and I then committed suicide, or if you raped me and I was just a sort of a gibbering idiot for the rest of my life, or if you raped me and my whole marital life fell apart, you can see how the one case it's all the cases are bad, but in some cases there's definitely a greater degree of harm.
There is that, but but still, you still get down to the fact a rape is a rape.
A rape is a rape. Okay.
A sexual assault. What happens afterwards? Maybe somebody gets lucky and they sort of get over it to a certain extent, but that doesn't excuse. And I know you're not excusing it. I'm not making that point. But what I'm saying is, like the crime was still the same crime.
Well, that's right. That's right. Okay, here's some of the things that Mr. O'Dwyer said. He said he hadn't made a formal complaint, but he had been physically abused by a priest on almost a daily basis. And I'm going to quote, this is the Irish Times. He said, I'm not quite sure I missed a day when I would have had to visit his office after school at the end of the hall on the 5th year corridor, as I remember it. He would strap me, and when I laughed at him to ask out loud if that's all he had, he got ruby red in the face and would hit me harder and longer. That was almost every single day. That was the price of going to Blackrock. Any thoughts on that? That's physical. That's physical now. That's a physical.
I know, but I Jude, myself and yourself went to schools that were remarkably similar. I have a friend. He's an engineer and he's a bright guy at school and all the rest. Much brighter than I was, and I met him quite recently. And I said to him, I'm not naming him even, but I says, when are we having our 50th celebrations come up? He says, hey Pat, what was there to celebrate? Jude, he said to me, he says, when we were in first year, he says, I remember the dean, he says, strapping everybody in the class, and he says he got so warm he had to take off his collar and his face got all red. He says that was the first time, he says, I had seen organized violence. And he says, I will never forget that. And he says, it stuck with me. And I know, and he's nearer 70 now than anything else. And that's well over 50 years ago.
Well, so what's your point in mentioning that then, Pat?
Well, the point of mentioning it, Jude, the whole thing about me and you and all of it, we went to schools like that. And I think those today, they would be charged and they would be thrown out. Back then, it was all sort of acceptable. And the thuggery, Jude, I would think so many people went through Catholic schools, and when they came out the other end, they were no longer Catholic. I'm certainly one of them. I lost. If those are the role model of the Catholic Church, please let me go find some other role models. They were not role models for me.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say? I'd like to know what constitutes physical abuse, because I mean, this guy was saying. I mean, I sort of laughed myself when I read it. He said I would laugh at him and ask out loud if that's all he'd got. I was trying to imagine myself saying to the Dean of St. Columns as he struck me, "Is that all you've got?"
Well, there was a priest in St. Junan's, and I could get you 2 or 3. He punched the young fella full in the face, knocked him out totally.
Yeah.
And the young fella, and he walked off and just left him there, sort him out type thing. You know, and they got away with it. And what I'm saying is, you know, and Jude, what I presume I'm trying to say is, it was absolute thuggery, and they got away with it, and something should have been done about it.
But Pat, a lot of, I mean, mothers carried wooden spoons then, you know. Fathers would have thumped their youngsters. There was a culture of physical punishment. I remember guys who were younger than me in a school, starting in a school, and inside weeks they were using a strap. It was in the air, you know. That was how you controlled classes. I remember my sister being married, and my uncle, who was a priest, saying, one thing, don't spoil your wains.
Richard, I grew up in it. My father was no softy, and neither was my mother. But I never got beaten up by them at home. You know, but I saw people getting beaten up in St. Junan's, you know, and I saw the strapping. I never saw the strap being used. No, you know, I used to get a clip around the ear when I misbehaved, or a slap in the arse, as my mother used to say. But that was it. No, there was
Pat,
no organization.
Should we not be taking cases then ourselves against our schools?
But there was. I know a couple of guys. Now was the what do you call it? The terms of you know, it's too late now. But there were certainly people there who had the statutes of limitation that would have had great cases because they could produce any number of witnesses.
That's true. That's true. There were some really bad people, but I sort of forgive them at this stage. I hated them for a long, long time. I hated the people who made my life a misery. I used to be really afraid, and I mean, I used to think I was unlucky, but I probably, you know, got myself on the wrong side. But I forgive them now because you know, we were all victims in a sense. That's what I think. I'm not going to go into the discussion of this, but I still think there's a question hanging in the air. What is physical abuse and what is a clip around the ear? I mean, where does the line get drawn between legitimate slap in the ear and, you know, physical abuse? And secondly, I'd like somebody to tell me what exactly is sexual abuse, because, like, I can think of different kinds of sexual abuse, and some are outrageous, and some are less so, much less so.
Yeah, but Jude, I don't suppose we can go into the details, but I think was it in your book or somebody's book? No, the teacher used to get the wee fella to go up and look up his trousers, you know, his short trousers. Like,
yeah. Well,
does that constitute physical or sexual abuse?
Well, that's the thing. The distinction is rarely made between what you've just described and, you know, somebody being raped or other things of that nature. Anyway, it's a distasteful subject to be talking about, Pat.
Yeah, exactly.
Disgusting. It was your fault. You brought it up. Okay, let's talk about a really man who is not at all disgusting, and that's Wes Streeting. Now, I told you about Wes Streeting before. He's a Labour MP, and I said that guy's going places.
Yes.
Well, now, in the course of his going places, he has said that he talked about Jeremy Corbyn and being senile.
Yeah.
And then he says, in jest, I said it, but I accept it was in poor taste. I've dropped Jeremy a note directly to apologise for any offence caused. What do you think? Is that fair?
No,
fair?
Jude, no, Jude, apparently on Sunak got up on, I think it was a Wednesday, and when he got attacked by Starmer, he said, "Don't you talk to me? You know, look at Corbyn, such and such." Corbyn, then he made several allegations about Corbyn's economic policy, and Corbyn got up on Thursday. I think it was Thursday. No, Wednesday. It must have been Tuesday. Sunak talked. Corbyn got up on Wednesday and said, "Like, if you're going to attack me, at least attack me on what I actually said and what I've done." You know, he basically said, what you said yesterday, the day previous, was lies, and you know, and that simply wasn't true, and that he should withdraw them, and so on. But here was the point. Streeting said, you know, that Germany was on a rant and he was going senile. Starmer didn't make any attempt to, you know, attack Sunak on the fact that he had made totally erroneous statements in regard to the Labour policy in 2018 or whatever it was. So the whole thing is, Starmer and Streeting and these guys are now won't attack, they won't defend Corbyn on any shape or form. They see him, it's a political decision. They want to be seen to be almost, you know, the middle of the road, a Tory light.
Yeah. I think that's it. They're quite willing to use any means possible to, either in a big way or in small ways like that, to denigrate Jeremy Corbyn. Now, of course, we must take into account the fact that we'd both be very positively disposed towards Jeremy Corbyn, and you have acted host to Jeremy Corbyn in your own home on one occasion. But it does seem, I must say, I think an awful lot less of Streeting when I heard that he would say, "Oh, you man's senile." I mean, Corbyn, I can't think of a less senile. You're not allowed to use that word anymore, I gather. A man less confused by age, let's say. Incidentally, tied to that was the fact that Streeting on some occasion called, I think, Corbyn or somebody else hysterical. And apparently that was seen as a very bad thing to do. And I think that, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I think calling somebody hysterical is, well, it's not a pleasant thing. It's not a compliment. But, you know, people know what you mean by it. And the people who criticised the use of the word hysterical was that it was a word that was used of women, and it comes from the notion of hysteria, and I forget what that meant exactly, but it was rooted in abuse of women. I just think, I'm tempted to say that's wokery.
Yeah, I do exactly. You know, it says, like, if during the course of political discourse or debate you say, "Look, stop being hysterical," you know, okay, as you say, it's not meant to be a compliment, but you know, are we sort of say, "Oh, you know, what are we supposed to sort of go, oh, calm down," you know? What are you know? People are entitled to have a bit of, you know, a rough house and debate. Jesus, they should go to the Australian Parliament, you know, where they refer to each other as old bastards and stuff like that.
Well, maybe they should go to the United States, because we're going short in time now. Only 2 minutes. Where Mr. Trump is, shall we say, licking his wounds? Is he finished?
Absolutely.
Is he finished?
I wouldn't go so far, but he's put it, I guess he's seriously wounded. Jude, the performance of the Republicans in the midterms was underwhelming, to say the least. You know, they were Biden is very unpopular at the minute. Inflation's going sky high, and things are not doing great. And there was supposed to be this red wave of Republicans coming in and so on. And the really big thing is Trump endorsed I'll go for a significant number of people. Quite a few of them didn't make it over the finishing line, and that's done him damage. Now, Jude, he's lost. He didn't want. And what was it? When was the first election? Was it 2016? No, the first presidential election. It must have been 2014 or something. He didn't want the popular vote then. He lost the last one by 7 million votes. They haven't controlled the House or the Senate. Like, I don't know how many times they see him as a winner, but anyway, to wrap up this, I would think Ron DeSantis, the California or the Florida government, he's now, the New York Times and Murdoch seem to be going for him.
That's right. Trump, of course, typically called Ron DeSantis Ron DeSanctimonious, which I always thought was kind of funny in a way, but it was certainly typical of him. You know, stick a derogatory label on him. I must say the fact that Rupert Murdoch has deserted him, Oh, that's not good news.
Not
Not
good
good
news.
news. And I'm going to use an expression now that isn't particularly polite. So if you're of a nervous nature, you might want to put your fingers in your ears. Rupert Murdoch has dismissed Donald Trump as being a fucking idiot. Which, let's say, that's your gold carrot Australian view and things.
Yeah. And New York Post said he was the future.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Pat.
Okay, Jude.
I think we've sucked the lemon dry.
Okay, Jude.
Okay, all the
Catch you
best.
later.
Thanks.
Bye, Jude.